And could I now move to the Waikura Linwood Central Heathcote Community Board report to Council? Alexandra Davids.
Kia ora. Thank you for having me here today. Over the last month, some of the decisions that have been made under delegation within our board area. Oh, sorry, I'll start by saying I will take the report as read, and if there's any questions after of my presentation or the report, please feel free. So we have made decisions around the Bromley Old School Reserve. And that was an extension to the basketball court, so they have unfortunately been playing basketball on half court for quite a while, so this was basically just finishing a long-standing job. We had the Richmond Hill Road new footpath. There was really great communication with the community and consultation, so it was a decision that was well liked by the community. We had last time I was here, we were discussing the landscape plan for the Linwood transport area, public transport area, and that has now gone through, which is really fantastic that we can make a move on that now. And obviously we had our Strengthening Communities Fund allocations, and it's great to recognise those groups and organisations making our communities a better place. Our community board plan developments. So this is really fantastic. We'd like to say thank you to the council for actually resolving the flood issues at Moa Reserve prior to us even adopting our plan. So that was definitely a win, and we've had great feedback from the residents in that area. It's definitely helped with some of the rain that we've had. Thank you for whoever's changing my slides for me. It's very useful. So obviously in the city we have our Dirty 30, and in the east side we have east side eyesores. So we have quite a few houses that are in question on the east side. One in particular is on Worcester Street. We have massive issues with antisocial behaviour around this property, where people are squatting in it. We have feces, litter, a lot of really horrific things, and just generally antisocial behaviour. The board would love to see council working with the community to try and clean up these areas. It's been a problem for a long time, and it is bringing down the well-being and pride in the east side, which is something that is important to a lot of our residents, obviously. On to Lancaster Park. So just really keeping this in front of the council. We are looking forward to collaborating with parks and staff and the community, and we're looking forward to kicking that off very soon. So the board have so it was brought to the attention of the board, the Coastal Hazards Working Party and the makeup of that. The board would like to look at representation from affected community boards. This has been something that's been discussed at the board table, and I'm happy to take questions on that after this presentation.
Thank you. Any questions?
Oh, I'm not finished.
Oh, sorry. My apologies. Sorry, I had someone talking in my ear, so I just...
just on to Linwood Park and Te Poutoitoi, the Linwood Pool. In 2018, there was a resolution from council to look at having a report to the community board around, or council, sorry, around looking at integrating the park upgrade with the pool. We would love to see this happen for our community, but it will obviously save costs, and it would be great to be able to open those sites as one. So it's just something we're keeping in front of council at the moment. So we had our principals breakfast recently, and it was an opportunity for principals to come to the board. The discussion around the pool was a big thing. We're wanting to obviously get schools using the pool in the best ways possible for their school and their local communities. There was also talk around the COVID-19 response, and massive thanks to all the teachers within our communities for their hard work. And also conversations around the tamariki and how they had coped with that. There have been some that obviously it's been a struggle, but it was really nice to hear that young people were relatively doing quite well, so a positive from that. So this was supposed to be my final slide, but I've got a really quick shout out after this one, but just a good news story to finish with in our community. So the Woolston Boxing Club hosted the 2020 South Island Novice Boxing Championships on the 15th of August. Under COVID-19 restrictions, the event had to be held as a crowdless tournament, and the club worked around this, implementing live feed and videography, which allowed the participants whānau to watch and cheer on their tamariki. The championships offered 4 categories of rounds: debut, novice, improver and open, which provided opportunity for young boxers across the South Island to gain experience in competing and to test their skills against others of the same level. The board helps fund this group through the purchasing of equipment, so it was great to see them actually being able to continue doing what they do even in a tough time of COVID. And it's not a slide, but because Carolyn, she's not here, but she did a very good job in bringing up the Opawa Library. I did bring it up at the last meeting saying that it would be opened, but it was really fantastic to see 70 people at the opening, all social distancing, and thank you, Carolyn, for the photo. But thank you.
Very good.
Done.
Now, any questions? Mel?
With the building on Worcester Street, what was that?
What was the, is it?
And why do we still have it?
It's a,
It's just a house.
there's quite a few.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not council owned?
No,
Right, okay.
no.
I've got Andrew, Jake and Anne and Yanni. We're keeping to 10 minutes, so just be aware.
Thanks, Alex, for the update and the presentation. Clearly some great work going on in your part of town. Now, we've got item 23, the disposal of Cecil Place, Waltham, on our agenda today. I'm going to be asking some questions of staff on that report when we get there, particularly regarding process.
Yep.
But can you confirm to me what knowledge the board had of this, or what involvement the board had with the disposal process? In particular, what contact there's been with the board, or what discussions took place on the matter that's in front of us today?
Right, so there has been a memo that's been to the board, but apart from that, no, there's been no other. But
So no discussion or anything of that nature?
no,
All right, that's great. Thank you.
thank you.
I've got Jake and Yanni.
Yeah, so just, I've just flipped through an amendment to Joe's machine, just that we amend to basically add 2 community board members in light of the board's concern about the coastal hazards working group. So 2 community board members, one from Coastal Burwood and one from LCH, as well as a member from Coastal Residents United.
Sorry, it doesn't say that. Oh, okay. All right.
It's member the flyer.
No, I remember I've got to follow a process, and we'll deal with the. Well, we actually haven't got a resolution on the table yet. So does somebody want to move that the community board report be received? I'm going to come back. It's Anne's turn to ask a question, but yeah, and no, Sarah's moved the receive the community board report, and do I have a seconder for receiving the community board report? Anne? Yeah. Okay, so that's been seconded. So and you're moving an amendment, but I want to finish the questions, because then obviously needs to be some discussion about that with the community board chair who's here. So Anne.
Just a quick question. I'm really impressed that you've got the principals together for a breakfast, because I know how busy they are. How often do you do that? How do you organise it? What's your focus?
We meet with them a couple of times a year. It is very hard to get them all together, and we have a lot in our area as well. So, it is a timely thing, and we have to work with what we have. But it is a really good opportunity to find out what the issues are. We find out about different roading things that are happening within their school areas. So it's a great open discussion.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yanni.
Yeah, I was just wondering what resources the board requires to do the Lancaster Park engagement.
So, how do you mean, sorry?
Well, when we discussed it at the board, I thought we were told that we didn't have the resources at a board level to do it, and that council would need to provide the support to do the community engagement.
Yeah.
So I just wondered if we could get some clarity around that, because obviously it's an important thing to move forward.
Yeah.
But if there's not enough resource to do it, then we need to ensure that there is.
Yeah, I mean, there is a process for doing that. So, and I mean, I don't see the basis for that. But if you want to, I mean, is the community boards got that continuing on their agenda? Have they?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you'll come back to us if there is an issue. With a Part A recommendation.
Yeah.
For support to do it.
Sorry?
Okay. Because that's just different than the advice we had when we discussed it at the board.
Look,
so.
I'm not giving you advice. I'm just simply saying that there is a due process, and I haven't received from the community board a request for any intervention in this matter. So it's unlike the matter that is the subject of the proposed amendment, because it was mentioned in the report itself.
We can look into that.
Have a look at the thing, but I'd take some advice from staff, because obviously they have got resources within the staff to be undertaking the engagement, and it's how the community board wraps itself into that process that seems to me to be the key to that.
Just to answer the question, it was a council resolution. The action has gone to the appropriate unit, and it is being resourced through council.
Right.
Yep.
Thank you. So the question in relation to the amendment that is to be moved, that was raised as the last item in your report, and which was that that the board has noted the establishment of the council's coastal hazards working group. The board would like the council to consider the working group membership to include representation from the affected community boards. We have a resolution in front of us around resolving to add people to the working group, and this was a working group that was established by council as a sort of a pre-engagement working group in order to facilitate the development of a process whereby we engage with our communities over coastal hazards, which is a broad thing. It's not just around the district plan. It's around a number of issues, and they've already engaged with the Coastal Residents United group. So I just want to understand. Perhaps, I mean, would it be all right? Because my preference would be that the working group meet and that they consider the issues, and that they perhaps even develop a summary of the approach that they are, or what they are actually involved in. Because I think that the Coastal Residents United group, there'll be no benefit of having one person on there when the group is being engaged with by the working group. So they are one of the many people with a major interest in our coastal environment and the impacts of sea level rise and things like that. So, I mean, I can just think of the Estuary Trust and people like that. You know, there's a vast number of groups. Yeah. So I'd rather that. I'm not saying that I oppose the idea. I'm just saying that because we're expanding this to include the Waimakariri District Council and ECAN, it's turning into an extremely large group, and it might not be an effective mechanism for the approach. But I'd really like you to comment on it, because I almost want this to be the subject of a consideration by the working group with some advice back to the council before we would decide to do that.
Yeah, and I totally understand that, and I understand sizes of working groups as well, and sometimes they can get a little out of control with a lot of different people on them. I know that from the community we have had obviously groups come to us, and they have been concerned that they haven't had, they won't be potentially having that representation on the working group, as they are people that understand the area and have science behind them and whatnot. And this was obviously our community board talking about community board representation, but I just wanted the council to be aware that, and we are aware that there are a lot of different community groups that are kind of coming to us in different places around the coastal areas. And I think as well we need to remember that while we're talking about the Linwood Central Heathcote Community Board and Burwood Coastal, we've also got Banks Peninsula and stuff as well. So it does actually widen it up a lot more. But this is for consideration. And whether that goes to the working group, I would have thought that it would be a working group consideration.
Yeah, well, perhaps I'll foreshadow a motion then if this is unsuccessful, that the because I mean the thing is that I'm reluctant to vote against it because it's a broadening of engagement and involvement. I think that the community board members I agree with, but the Coastal Community Residents Union or United is just one of the many groups, so I wouldn't want to see one group singled out. But I would really like, so my foreshadowed motion is that that the matter be referred to the Coastal Hazards Working Group for advice back to council. So that way that gives them the opportunity to consider it as a group and also to advise us as to the appropriate course of action. And as I say, the group is being extended. I don't know what the numbers are up to now. It's up to 12 now. So, but anyway, that's.
And just in regard to those numbers as well, we weren't aware of those numbers because we just not had that information back to us. So. Yeah. But
these have been recent changes about trying to. It's an iterative process, and it is not just about the Coastal Hazards chapter of the district plan. So, Andrew.
You mentioned the words Banks Peninsula. but they're glaringly missing from your or from the amendment that's been put forward. If this were to carry, I would be deeply concerned if the area with the biggest coastline of all were excluded.
Yeah, they didn't exclude them.
No.
It was just Jake's wording. So, yeah.
So ours didn't say that. You're going to end up with a working group of 50 at this rate.
Oh,
I mean,
sorry.
also Innis
You have to add
Waters
Papanui Innis as well,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
they cover Brooklands. I mean, where it hits the... No, I know. Look, the thing is that I'm hoping that this is, you know, we do need to resolve this. I don't like this method of bringing matters in front of the council where the community board hasn't, you know, formulated an appropriate resolution for us to consider. So I would have preferred that the community board came forward with a recommendation that had been worked through, rather than people developing, you know, amendments to a resolution to receive a report on the fly. So that's my preference, because we end up in this situation. So, but I think that I've put up a foreshadowed motion. So if the motion fails, then that motion will be put, as long as I've got a seconder for the foreshadowed motion. James Daniels, right. Okay, so, and who's the seconder for Jake's? Is it you, Yanni? And, sorry? Right, so, yeah.
Before we make any decision on Jake's amendment, I would like to get staff's advice of actually having an external member on a governance working group.
Yeah, okay. So, is it Brendan? Would you, okay, sorry, I'm sorry to do this to you, but if you could move to one side and just, or yeah, if we could just get Brendan to come to the front.
Thanks, Leanne. So just a couple of observations. The next meeting of the Coastal Hazards Working Group is tomorrow, and I think the members of the working group have heard loud and clear that what the community board is seeking, and already on the agenda for tomorrow is the matter of the additional membership from Waikura District Council and ECAN's involvement as well. And I'd simply observe, as the questioning has been, actually the representation is far broader than any single community board and any single grouping. And staff already, as you say, Leanne, do engage with CCRU plus a number of other stakeholder groups, and we will be engaging with the community boards. The working group is establishing the process for that engagement, not to do all of the work. So it's just at a very early stage. We've had a couple of meetings so far. We will engage further. I wonder whether it might be prudent for the working group to consider the matter of the membership and how the engagement happens with the community boards, because I simply observe that if we start to do this, then I suspect it will be far more community boards and far more representative groups, and we also need to think about how we would then do the same for Waimakariri, assuming that they are included in the program as well, and that obviously becomes a very large working group at that stage. So I wonder whether a prudent approach would be to ask the working group to consider this matter tomorrow and to report back to council.
That's what I was hoping for, which is why I foreshadow motion, but I can't not accept an amendment that's been moved and seconded. But the amendment has changed to 3 community board members, and the 3rd community board is the Banks Peninsula one.
The question wasn't asked though, answered. It was actually around bringing in a representative from a community group onto this working group, which is a governance level.
Yeah, sorry, maybe I wasn't explicit enough. It is a governance working group, and it would be, this isn't any disrespect at all to Warwick or CCRU. It would be
No.
very difficult for every other group who then also wanted to be involved, and we run the risk of elevating one group above the others, and I think that would be probably disrespectful to a wide range of other stakeholders who represent their communities outside of the relatively specific community that CCRU represents.
And I did note that the community board itself mentioned only community boards in their discussion that they had at their community board meeting. So it wasn't, there's been a subsequent approach around CCRU, but then you just make that available to one and not to everyone else. So I mean, I just think
That would
it's
undermine our
inappropriate.
engagement approach.
It absolutely would, yeah. I mean, the point is that we're engaging with the community at an early stage and also finding out what information it is that the community needs, because there's a lot of expert advice that has to be taken into account as well, in a consideration of a range of issues that affect our coastal environment. So,
And I would just stress no decisions have been made about
No.
where we would in fact start the engagement. So
no, this is about getting the process right. Yeah.
Leanne, I'm happy to amend it to take out the coastal residents united group if that is take staff advice on that one. I mean, I do think they're a key group involved in this, but that's right. Well, this is not a key group. We're here to fix clear emissions, not offer representation to everyone.
Is the seconder happy with that? All right. Okay. Thank you. We'll just I'll put the amendment by council. Yes. Can you just wait till I do this? We've got an amendment that's been moved and seconded. So, is there any debate, Jake?
Just really quickly. This is a motion that has come from the community board. It's an amendment put up by me, but it was obviously in response to the chair's desire to see greater community representation. I think if we don't get this process right from the beginning, it's doomed to failure at the end. And there's been a real loud chorus of this isn't a representative group. And I'm sure the working group have the best of intentions and they will engage with a large group of stakeholder interests, but representation and engagement are different, and you can't just allow the working group to discuss this matter tomorrow. You actually have to fix the representation problem to fix the buy-in issue. And I think the three community boards we've got there are the three by far and away most represented in terms of this issue.
Mike?
Thank you. I'm absolutely struggling to understand how you think this working group is not representative of the communities that are affected. There's 8 councillors on this working group. 6 of them actually represent communities that are affected by coastal hazards. They're all community board members. And I don't know how you don't realise that you sit on a community board member as a community board member as a councillor. To do this, you're making a group much larger than it needs to be. It is hard enough to schedule a working group that consists of 12. If you want to put that suddenly up to around 15, it's going to be impossible to have meetings. This is actually a really important process, and everyone realise how important it is to get right. It's at the very initial stage of it, and we're actually making sure we formulate it and get it right so we get community engagement and buy-in done correctly. And we will be making sure the community boards are aware. But you have, from your community board, 2 community board members already on it. Coastal Burwood already has 2 community board members already on it. Papanui Innes has 2, Banks Peninsula has 1, and Spade Cashmere has 1. So you just need to actually have a look at the makeup and actually realise there's proper representation on this working group.
Yanni? Andrew?
I think to say that community boards are represented isn't actually true. If community boards could appoint representatives to that working party, then that would be the case. But councillors have a different function than community board members, and while we're sworn on to community boards, if the community board hasn't actually appointed us to that group, we're not there representing the community board. So I just think we need to be clear about that. But fundamentally, I think this is a really important issue. It's got massive implications for the city. And I personally think having the ability for the community boards to appoint representatives is actually a good thing. I can see it only helping rather than hindering. So I'm supportive of it, especially because the request has been made and we have been a council that has said that we do support community boards.
Sarah? Oh, sorry, Andrew.
Thank you. I appreciate the request and I appreciate the spirit of it. And I am pleased to see Banks Peninsula included there in case this does carry. A working group of 12 people is large already. And, this working group needs to be effective. And one of the things it needs to be effective in is planning engagement with communities and engaging with communities and engaging well with the community boards and including the community boards as it does that. But whether appointing community board members to it is the right way to do that, I think is open to question, given the size of the working group already and the nature of the work that they're doing, and that the key areas to be targeted for engagement first have not yet been decided. So what I would hate would be, for example, for us to appoint a Banks Peninsula Community Board member to that group and then there be no areas on Banks Peninsula that were signalled for early engagement. Certainly the one member of the Banks Peninsula Community Board who already sits on the working group will be an effective representative of Banks Peninsula and will report back to the Banks Peninsula Community Board very effectively. And if I think that that's no longer working, I'll be the first person to say so, but I expect that it will. So I appreciate the spirit of the amendment that's been put forward, and I certainly think there's some conversation we need to have in that spirit around how we effectively include the community boards and include the communities in every bit of the work that we do, but whether expanding the size of the working group to more than the already relatively large 12, I question that approach. So I'm pleased to see Banks Peninsula in there in case this goes through, but I'm not going to be supporting this amendment today.
Sorry, who was... Sarah, yeah.
Kia ora, thank you. Coastal hazards are one of the biggest and most difficult issues that the city is going to face. Engagement was poor during the original district planning process and trust has been really low. This new process has only just started and we're trying really, really hard to do it right this time. We need to build relationships and trust in the community and in the community boards. And community boards and community representatives will be engaged really, really soon. We have learned a lot from previous processes, and I'm really looking forward to the working group and staff bringing the new process to both the boards and the wider community really soon. At that point, when other councillors, community board members and the community have seen the process that we're proposing, I think it's at that point that rather than before they've seen it, that that decisions could be made or recommendations could be made to change it. But I think it does a disservice to our communities to start bagging the process before people have seen it. And I think that if we bag the process early, we lose the trust in our communities. And I think that that's a real risk at this point. I'm looking forward to making sure that we do it right. I want to do it with the community. And we had 2 really, really good meetings with CCRU before this paper even came to council. They were happy with the terms of reference. We tweaked a couple of things based on their feedback, and they were happy with the membership at that time.
Thank you. James?
Kia ora. Look, I was approached on this issue as to whether I would support such a notion, but I didn't realise that we were going to be having to make a decision on a motion today. I thought that the working party might consider it in its meeting, as other members of the party have said. And I expressed my, I didn't take umbrage, but I did express my disappointment that councillors are not considered members of the community board. I'm going to take offence on that. on a personal level anyway. So I'm also disappointed that we're going through this process in this forum. It's wrong to be developing a motion like that. I feel like we're being sideswiped a little bit on this. So while I'm open to the notion, I cannot support that motion.
Yeah, I want to speak in favour of the foreshadowed motion in my name, that, and it really backs up what James Daniels has just said, which is that the Coastal Hazards Working Group has been established. It's had a couple of meetings. The council signed it off, and it is appropriate that the question of membership is considered by the working group. We set up the working group for a purpose, and that was to get ahead of the significant amount of engagement that has to take place when we're dealing with our coastal environments and the uncertainties that come with the future in relation to climate change and the impacts that will have on our coastal environment. So we have a process that we have to develop cautiously and carefully. We saw the impacts of not getting it right in the past. I would like to take the advice of the Coastal Hazards Working Group, deeply considering the process that they want to use to engage people fully in this process. And if that means increasing the membership to include the 3 community boards, then I'll be all for it. But I just want to hear what the working group has to say before I make that call. So, so on that note, I will put the amendment number 2, to add the 3 community board members. So it's probably better that you do a roll call, because I think it's going to be a split decision.
Councillor Templeton? No. Councillor McClellan?
Yes.
Councillor McDonald?
Yes.
Councillor Johansson?
Yes.
Councillor Galloway? No. Councillor Daniels?
No.
Councillor Coker? Yes. Councillor Chen?
No.
The Mayor?
No.
Councillor Scandrett?
No.
Councillor Major?
Yeah.
Councillor Kewen?
Yes.
Councillor Goff?
No.
Councillor Davidson?
No.
Councillor Cotter?
No.
Councillor Chu? No. Councillor Turner?
No.
Five for the motion, 11 against the motion and 1 abstention.
I declare that lost, and I'll put the foreshadowed motion that the matter of increased membership, including representation from community boards of the Coastal Hazards Working Group, be referred back to the working group to report back to council. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. And I'll put the amended motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Alexandra.
Thank you. Thank you for the debate.